Hi, Michael.
Hello.
How are you? How are you? I know
good.
you're a very busy man, so thank you for joining us. The GRC Lunch Club, your end, the GRC Supper Club, our side.
Now, organizations need a more balanced view to enterprise risk, and as a result, we're going to see a greater focus on operational resiliency, bringing business continuity and operational risk together and being able to integrate that into the strategies of the organization. At the end of the day, I'd like to, and we're in the GRC Supper Club here. I'd like to go to the official definition of GRC that's found in the OSEG GRC capability model. This is the only definition of GRC that is a publicly vetted standard out there. And so GRC is a capability to reliably achieve objectives. That's the governance piece, whether they're entity level objectives, division, department, process, project, or asset level objectives. What are the objectives? While addressing uncertainty, that's risk management. The definition of risk in ISO 31000 is risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So there's a relationship there. And act with integrity, that's the compliance. So once again, GRC is the capability to reliably achieve objectives while addressing uncertainty and act with integrity. To me, this whole focus on operational resiliency is at that core there. That how do we maintain resilient operations so that we can reliably achieve our objectives? And in the case of a pandemic, those objectives are changing while addressing the uncertainty and risk and act with the integrity of the organization and be able to make sure those controls are in place. I often illustrate, these types of scenarios that we're talking about with the Titanic from going back to 1912. With the case of the Titanic, Captain E.J. Smith said, that he had never seen a wreck and never been in a wreck, and he could not conceive of any disaster happening to the vessel. You have overconfidence in the ship's design, from the CEO of the ship himself, the captain, but also in the public. The front page of the newspaper, the press said the Titanic was unsinkable. It sank on its maiden voyage. How often are our businesses overconfident? Risk, we're a good company. We got things under control here. We don't need to be worried about pandemics or IT security risks and things. How often is our senior leadership overconfident, like Captain E.J. Smith of the Titanic? There's a push to get across the Atlantic quickly to show its speed and power of the day. How often are we pushing the business too fast where we can't keep up? And risk can catch us off guard. There's external risk elements that bear down on the Titanic called icebergs. It just so happens in 1912, the Northern Arctic ice shelf was already breaking up. There's already some form of climate change. And then not only that, the tidal moon poles of January, February, March 1912 were stronger in nature. They were bringing more of those icebergs further into the shipping lanes, creating more hazards than were normally there in April 1912 when the Titanic happened. Just like with our business and organizations, we live in an external risk environment that can be impacted by COVID-19.
The thing that's quite interesting to me, Michael, is something you said about the fact that these uncertainties and risks are not sitting, they sit with one organization or one person in a boardroom, but actually they sit in every single department.
Yes.
And one of the things I was so we are right now, every single day working with companies since COVID struck, working on public affairs, communications, risk management, etc. And I'm really intrigued about what is your solution to stop risk sitting with an individual who probably, I don't mean to be rude to half the people in this call, but probably has some fantastic military history, probably worked in a government, probably worked in compliance, etc. And actually understand that the head of marketing, the head of communications, the head of supply, head of everything from how we're going to get our provenance of products right the way through to our regulatory controls, and more importantly, how we're going to meet every single standard around our needs to be able to be meeting our requirements from our banks and our suppliers. How do we get that to the boardroom that's not vested in one person in a RAG process where we're all doing red, amber, and green?
I mean, to me, it's what I call a federated approach to risk management. That
nice.
We have a risk officer, an enterprise risk management program, but there's a lot, as you bring up, there's lots of departments of risk. There's HR risk, there's supply chain risk, there's IT risk, there's quality risk, environmental risk, health and safety risks. We have lots of departments of risk. And it's the role of that more central risk function to be more of a collaborator and communicator of risk across the business and get all these different subject matter experts and departments to work together cohesively on a risk strategy. And the chief risk officer isn't there to own risk. I mean, risk is owned by the business.
But do you not think there should be some sort of tool to help? I mean, he owns the business, he owns the risk in the business. But do you think that I mean, we're working right now trying to work out what is the tool to help all those departments come together and have that conversation? Because at the moment, the board isn't asking them to have that conversation, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, it involves strategy, process, and information architecture and technology to be able to manage all that. And strategy and process gets defined, and from there, the information technology architecture can support that with the right tool. You know, because there's good tools and there's bad tools out there, and there's, you know, tools that are good for the small to mid-size organization, but then those aren't necessarily the same tools that meet the large organization, because large organizations have a lot of risk normalization aggregation. One might be a high risk in one department, might be a low risk in another department. And I was talking to one large financial services firm that said their board of directors never wants to see a heat map from their, you know, their risk management platform again, because everything just sort of got thrown on there without any logic.
Oh my God, I love that.
Another quick question that's come in from Andrew Boyarsky around, in conversations that he's had, some organizations are blaming risk managers for not planning for C19. Are you hearing this? Is it a fair analysis? And are you hearing about, you know, BCM managers being let go?
Yeah, definitely, because part of the problem is that a lot of BCM as well as enterprise and operational risk management have been overly focused on IT security. And again, I am not minimizing IT security. In the 1990s, I cut my teeth in risk management in IT security. You know, it is a risk, and it's a significant risk. But a lot of BCM programs, a lot of operations programs, and enterprise risk programs, you know, they're operating myopically, like with the blinders on, like the horse, that, you know, our most significant risks are IT security risks, and they're completely ignoring other risks like health and safety and environmental risks. And those are buried in other parts of the organization, not getting proper attention. And we need a more balanced view of risk. And so, yes, I think some people's feet are being held to the fire.
Brilliant. And I tell you what, there's one more, and then I will move on to James, and then hopefully we can keep as many of you for an extra 15 minutes just for the panel discussion. But because we were talking about heat maps, and I wrote some notes down, which don't want to go into too much detail around ERM, one of my experience of working with ERM at PwC and as a software guy, were high-level spreadsheet teams of 3. ORM was doing risk, you know, risk PDFs and RAG reports. IT risk were doing control rate, you know, RACI matrix, and the BCM team were doing the runbooks and the playbook. So that's my experience of it. And this question really is coming from Manoj, who's Manoj Kuwal. Do you believe organizations will change their approach to deal with low frequency times high severity risks? These risks don't get high enough on the risk heat maps and hence may get ignored. For such risks, does assessing likelihood or frequency even matter?
Yeah, I wrote a paper on that in my Forrester days back in 2006, you know, and saying that our heat maps are sort of miscolored and misplotted. You know, we're not having significant risks, you know, that are high impact, high likelihood, that are often thrown up in the upper right. You know, organizations aren't having, like, you know, $1 billion loss events every month. But those are where the red risks are. But the most significant risks, like a 9/11, like a COVID-19, I mean, those are those low frequency, high impact